Welcome to Better Futures.
What I've always found interesting about social media's influence on morality is the cultural relativism that you will occasionally run into when when members react to a certain piece of news or information. I notice this because I'm a black man, and occasionally when black Twitter or when a black person does something online, the social media matrix occasionally reacts differently depending on the person's race. It's as a white man, I guess somebody who's also in Mexico and who's observing social media's influence across the world. How do you think cultural relativism is impacting social media's methods of enforcing morality?
That's a really great question. Certainly, there is a lot of cultural relativism that is evidenced in Twitter content feeds and so on. I want to tie this once again to something from my interview with Edgar. I wouldn't say that he was comparing cancel culture at all, but he was simply comparing the emotionally charged discourse on social media to the reception of Hannah Aron and her thesis on the banality of evil. She was taken to task, we might say, for calling out that minority of Jewish community members who assisted in the Holocaust in minor ways, I hope anyhow. And people had a very strong emotional reaction to that because nobody wants to hear that. And although that's a hyperbolic example, that inability to set aside one's perceptions of the world in favor of the objective reality that can be derived either with evidence or through logical discourse, that to me seems an endemic problem on social media.
I kind of want to pivot now. This isn't such a big turn, I think, because we're talking about social media. And you and I are both writers. And I feel like something that I always notice as a writer is that when communicating in person, human beings are a lot more subtle. But when communicating by social media, we're a lot more hyperbolic. How do you think social media is enforcing our ways of communicating with each other when it comes to morality, when it comes to ethics, and when it comes to the direction of our society?
Thank you for such an insightful question. I would say, based on what research I've done into dyadic morality as of late, the determination of moral fault or of moral virtue probably also, it arises on social media within the context of, first, what party can be the agent, the subject that is bringing this into being? And second, what are the norms being violated? Especially in the case of cancel culture, as it were. What is the perceived value of the norms that are being violated? And that, I think, is where a lot of the emotional tension arises from when we conduct moral discourse on social media.
Is there, at least in terms of what you've seen, has there been any congratulatory or cathartic release that you've seen through social media? Because so far we've been touching on cancel culture, which I think is a negative expression of social media, which is a group of people responding negatively to something. Have you noticed any sort of positive reaction?
Yes, thank you for asking. I can point to the first of this interview series. My interview with Marshall Bolin came about simply because he, as a friend, saw some dark humor, I suppose, that I posted on social media and reached out to me, and we had a great discussion. One thing that I continue to take away from that discussion is to try to use hopelessness as a kind of compass to determine the sort of life that you would derive more meaning from, that would not include the experience of hopelessness. I bring that up only because I think it works so well in concert with what my friend Priyank had said in another interview about the necessity that we as human beings connect with each other about the perceived hopelessness of our circumstances. And perhaps through that connection, we can have more positive interactions like the one that started all of this off for me, and perhaps eventually develop develop healthier discourse on social media and develop healthier lives as a result of that discourse's influence on our lives.
I do remember that interview, and it's very lovely. I think you and I have had a few back and forths that were positive and were inspired by that feeling of hopelessness that you were discussing. We've done this before, and every time we do it, it's just a little bit more insightful in every degree. I feel like there's an expanding horizon whenever we have these conversations. So I want to say thank you,
Yeah.
and I want to wish you a very good day.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and I look forward to speaking with you again sometime in the not too distant future. And perhaps we can come up with some way of addressing this toxic discourse taking place on a social media network of networks that seems to be negatively influencing our own well-being.
The Matrix isn't going anywhere, but you and I certainly are.
Yeah, we're on our way out.
Thank you for this interview.
My pleasure. You're very, very welcome. And if this is a step in the positive direction, I hope that we can both connect with even more people on the same subjects.
I'm certain we are. There is a road ahead of us.